Welcome to our council meeting this evening in Avoca. As the meeting chair, I give my consent for this open council meeting to be streamed live, recorded and published online. Anyone who is invited to read out a question or a presentation will be recorded, and their voice, image and comments will form part of the live streaming and recording. The chair and or CEO have the discretion and authority at any time to direct the termination or interruption of live streaming. Such direction will only be given in exceptional circumstances where deemed relevant. Circumstances may include instances where the content of debate is considered misleading, defamatory, or potentially inappropriate to be published. The stream will stop prior to the closed section of the meeting. The public is able to view the live stream via our website, www.pyrenees.vic.gov.au. Should technical issues prevent the continuation of the stream, a recording will be made available on our website. Please stand for the oath. Heavenly Father, we ask you to give your blessing to this council, direct and prosper its deliberations to the advancement of your glory and the true welfare of the people of the Pyrenees Shire. Amen. We acknowledge the people past and present of the Wadawurrung, Jar Jar Wurrung, Eastern Ma and Watchabollock tribes whose land forms the Pyrenees Shire. We pay our respects to the customs, traditions and stewardship of the land by the elders and people of those tribes on whose land we meet today. Is everybody present? There are no apologies. Any notice of disclosure of interest by councillors or officers? No notice interest. Thank you. Confirmation of the previous minutes. The ordinary council meeting on the 19th of October, closed council meeting on the 19th of October, and the statutory meeting of council held on the 9th of November. Moved Councillor Clark, seconded Councillor Keogh. All those in favour? Is there any business arising from those minutes? None. Thank you. Public participation. Members of the public are encouraged to ask questions of council at ordinary council meetings. Members of the public may, at the meeting in person or verbally, ask a question. All attendees must register by midday on the day of the meeting to ensure council adheres to the number of attendees permitted under the COVID safe plan. Members of the public who are unable to attend in person can participate in question time by submitting their questions in writing, either online through council's website, by mail or hand delivered. The person can ask a maximum of 2 questions at any one meeting on any topic, and the questions and responses shall not exceed 5 minutes. Questions are to be received by 12 noon day of the meeting. Questions are read by the chairperson during public participation. The chairperson or councillor or council officer to whom the question is referred may immediately answer the question or take the question on notice for the next ordinary meeting. Members of the public may present a submission to council in the period immediately following public question time, which follows the same rules. I have 2 questions submitted. 3 questions, I'm sorry, submitted via email. Question from Katrina Lee of Lexington. Hepburn Shire Council in their newsletter quoted Western Victoria Transmission Network. Council continues its advocacy and is strongly opposed to the transmission lines being above ground and the potential location of the transmission station. Keep up to date with our activities at hepburn.vic.gov.au. Is the Pyrenees Shire Council for or against the transmission lines being above ground through the Pyrenees Shire? Mr. Nolan.
Thanks, Mr Mayor, and I thank Katrina Lee for the question. Council has not formally resolved for or against in respect of undergrounding of the transmission lines. As the community is aware, AusNet services have been engaged to undertake technical work associated with the environmental effect statement, which is currently underway. Council has instead sought that the option for undergrounding be properly considered as part of that technical work, which is currently underway. AusNet has confirmed that the underground is being considered properly as an option in respect of that transmission. Further information on the undergrounding is to be released in the near future by AusNet Services, which is an undertaking that AusNet has provided. And there is further community engagement expected of the community in the coming months. The EES, once it is released, we anticipate sometime around the middle of next year, although it's not a council process. We are understanding that that's around the time frame that the EES will be released, and council is committed to do a comprehensive assessment of that technical work and make a comprehensive submission in conjunction with the other councils that are impacted by the transmission line. And as part of that consideration, council may well determine to take a formal position in respect of the transmission line, but once that technical work has been determined, council will continue to advocate for the community, continue to meet with AusNet Services, and continue to advocate for information in respect of the work that's being done on the transmission line to be made publicly available.
Second question from Katrina. Power lines not only impact the landowners through which the transmission line route will pass, but their neighbours. The local community who not only need to consider power lines, but the wind and solar farms and the infrastructure required to support and service them, which will proliferate in the area. Following on from the Shire Council's confidential meetings with AusNet, when is there to be an in-person community engagement session with the Shire, AusNet and the community? This was promised in a previous Shire meeting.
Thanks, Mr Mayor, and thanks to Katrina Lee for the additional question. Council does not have access to any more information than what is generally available for the community at this point in time. And council encourages the community to make access to the information that is available. And certainly that the information is available on the project website, including the webinars that were recently held by AusNet, where members of the community were invited to participate. Those webinars can be accessed again. There were one-on-one sessions with members of the public that wanted to take up the opportunity to meet with specialists. There are fact sheets that are being produced. There's a landowner access document that is available on the website that's recently been released, which provides a lot of information that's relevant to landowners impacted by the transmission line, that provides some further information about compensation and access to properties that is invaluable for landowners. And it's understood that there will be some further community engagement initiated by AusNet Services in the coming months. And as part of that community engagement, council will be participating in that. So certainly that will be the opportunity for council and the community to participate in that same engagement process. Council will continue to advocate for and on behalf of landowners impacted, and generally on behalf of the whole of the Shire. And at this point in time, Mr Mayor, it's not considered necessary or appropriate for council to initiate a meeting with the community and AusNet, because effectively we don't have any further information to provide, and the upcoming sessions would be a really good opportunity for the community to participate, as well as for council to be available and to participate and continue to advocate. We continue to encourage residents that may feel aggrieved by the process to get in contact with council, and council continues to meet with landowners and concerned residents about this, and to take up those issues in advocating for with the community to AusNet as part of their technical assessment work. So again, I just thank Katrina Lee for the question and for drawing attention to this really significant and important project that's currently under investigation in our Shire.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan. Third question from a different ratepayer, Sandra Bishop of Lexton. The question is, when will the Lexton Framework Plan be approved? Prior to the Lexton Framework Plan, I have been in discussions for 13 years to have our property boundary adjusted. Many times we've been advised that this is being processed, however, we have no conclusion. We wish to have this resolved before the end of the year. Please advise when this will be completed. Mr. Gowland.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Ms. Sandra Bishop, for your question. I know that council officers have been in communication with Ms. Bishop in relation to the amendment that council officers have been working on as part of the Pyrenees Futures project, and council initiated that project with 3 towns which have some amendments on the table, and they include amendments at Warborough, Snake Valley and Lexton. That amendment has been submitted by council with all the relevant information and has been submitted to the Minister via DELP, who are the department that look after such amendments. And there is some good news in that conditional approval to exhibit has been notified to council. However, I do emphasise that it is conditional approval. There has been some further questions by DELP to further justify some of the amendments, and specifically the amendments relating to properties in Lexton to justify the reasoning for some of the amendment. Council officers I know are working through that at this stage. It's also important to say that council strategic officer resource is very limited at this point in time, and I know that that department is seeking some support from DELP, who have offered through a government scheme to assist with amendment processes, and we look to access that to further this amendment. Unfortunately, it's very, very unlikely that this amendment will be passed before Christmas, but I can assure Ms. Bishop that all work is being done where we've got resources to ensure that this amendment goes through and the information is provided in as timely manner as we have available to us.
Thank you, Mr. Gowans. Are there any questions from anyone in the gallery? Mr. David, could you grab the microphone, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and congratulations on your recent appointment to the Mayor. I want to refer to the new law that was put out, the group of laws put out in February 2019. In it, there was quite a remarkable comment about containers in the Shire. They don't seem to be reducing, they seem to be going more. And also I was wondering, what is the compliance with the 10 square metre building permit regulation? Because there seems to be an awful lot of new buildings lying around as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. David. Mr. Gowans.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Davey, for your questions. You are correct that Council's local law in 2019 did emphasise the requirement for permits if shipping containers are to be used on properties. And even though we know that there are issues with containers, I can assure Mr Davies that council officers have been working with landowners to ensure that they do have adequate permits, or if they can't get one, that they are removed. It is an ongoing problem, and I can assure you that we have had quite a number of removed, but Mr Davies' observation is relevant in that more appear. I suppose the key message, and through this forum to the community, is that before placing a shipping container on a property, if they could seek council's information prior to doing that, so that there are circumstances where they can be accommodated on the site, and permit can be issued, depending on what the use is and for what period of time they're to be used. Various permissions may need to be sought, whether that be a local law permit or a building permit, depending on how the shipping container is to be used. And there are also protections for amenity, not just for the landowner, but the surrounding landowners, because they have been identified as being eyesores to many in the community. So therefore, there are things that can be done to limit their impact, and that's why we suggest that you contact council before placing shipping containers on properties. But thank you for that part of the question. In relation to compliance, the Building Code of Victoria is something that applies universally across Victoria, and there are certain exemptions for very small buildings. In terms of enforcement and compliance with buildings on properties, council takes a risk-based approach, and where we are notified or it's been identified that illegal building works have occurred, council do investigate where our resources allow us to, and we also look at, from a risk-based approach, whether life, preservation of life and safety is our highest mechanism. So there are certain issues with buildings that if people are living in buildings that are non-compliant, that's obviously a really important issue. Swimming pools, if they're not correctly fenced, are another high-risk issue. Buildings that are used for commercial purposes that might have accommodation in them is another high-risk issue. So there are particular things that, with the limited resources that council have, that we do concentrate on. And I do take your point that if there are illegal buildings, we will assess them when they're brought to our attention. We have got limited resources. We're not necessarily going and looking under on every property for illegal dwellings, but we when they're brought to our attention, or that there's a high risk issue, we will take action. Yeah, that's probably all I need to say on that particular issue at this stage, but thank you again.
Thank you, Mr. Gibbons. Any further questions? Thank you very much. Move on to item 10, items for notice. Any questions or? Thank you. Move, Councillor Clark. Second, Councillor Williams. Any questions? Councillor Farrell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My questions for Ms. Bramble, it's just in relation to the cars request. I note that there's 2 outstanding in the Beaufort ward from 2020, and they appear to be drainage top requests. And from what I can gather, they're more a capital works project rather than a cars task. Are you able to shed some light on that, please, Ms. Bramble?
Question, Councillor Ferrari. Yes, they are relating to complex drainage issues. All of the outstanding requests prior to 2021 our drainage issues. The two for Beaufort, one relates to an issue that can only be solved by the implementation of a new culvert, and the other one by the replacement of the existing culvert. So they are capital works programs and need to be put on a future capital works program. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Cranwell, the legislative change implementation update. Can you give us a brief rundown on where we stand with regards to those?
Thank you for your question, Mr. Mayor. Yes, with regards to this report gave information regarding the implementation of two key pieces of legislation that came in over the last 2 years. With regards to the Local Government Act 2020, everything is being done in accordance with the mandatory timeframes, and we are in the final stages of the implementation of that act, with the workforce plan being implemented by the end of the year in its final drafting stages, and will be provided to council for information in December. A staff code of conduct and a recruitment policy, they're also being developed, due by the end of December. Staff code of conduct will be approved by the Chief Executive Officer as the lead administrator, and the recruitment policy again is in its final drafting stages and will be provided to council for adoption in December. We are revisiting the community engagement policy and developing a new community engagement strategy, as promised earlier in the year when council did adopt an engagement policy, and that is in progress at the moment, likely to come to council in December, giving more information on what our planning is around that, and then it'll be going out for community engagement and likely to come back for approval early in the new year. The asset management plan is due in June, so that would be the end of the key documents that have been required under the Local Government Act. With regards to the Gender Equality Act 2020, again, that's quite a big body of work that officers have had to do to implement a process for conducting gender impact assessments, conducting a workplace gender audit, and submitting data to the Public Sector Gender Equality Commissioner. The dates that were originally due for the workplace gender audit information was originally the 31st of October and deferred now to the 1st of December. And the submission of a gender equality action plan, which was originally due on the 31st of October and has been deferred to the 31st of March 2022. Although that information gathering and documentation and development of the plan is in progress, the dates were changed by the state government and council to allow for COVID delays of implemented local government quite significantly. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cranwell. Anything else? All those in favour? Yeah. Item 13, Beaufort Linear Project. Oh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillors, I'm happy to provide this report, which is prepared by Mr. Ray Davies, the Manager of Economic Development and Tourism, and it relates to the Beaufort Linear Project. The project seeks Council's endorsement of an application for funding to complete a feasibility study, community engagement phase, and detailed master plan for a project that's called the Beaufort Linear Project. The project has been initiated through the Central Highlands Integrated Water Management Group. Now, this is a group which Council participates in, and it's led by Central Highlands Water. So it's a regional forum. Now, that regional forum has identified opportunities for what's referred to as blue-green infrastructure in small towns as a project. And as a subset of that project, this project in Beaufort has been identified as a priority. In essence, the Beaufort Linear Project aims to create a green corridor and walking paths that would join key recreational areas in Beaufort that are highly valued by the community. The proposal aligns with the Beaufort Walkability Strategy and proposes a corridor that flows along the Garibaldi Creek from the Beaufort Lake downstream past the school precinct, the RV campsite, swimming pool, and through the playground facilities at Big Street. The project also proposes to enhance the visual and recreational amenity of the area north of the railway line, which is expected to become the town entry once the township of Beaufort bypass occurs. So, Mr. Mayor, this project, as outlined, seeks council support for an application to be made following DELP, who have recently invited councils to submit applications for projects that have been identified through this integrated water management forum, and to submit project proposals with IWM specific purposes. Now, this same forum was the forum that identified the Beaufort Recycled Water Project. And a Beaufort Recycled Water Project is one which seeks to utilise the Beaufort wastewater and have it treated and recycled and used for recreation purposes, including at the Beaufort Golf Club. And that project, which has now been funded both through Central Highlands Water and DELP, is currently underway in terms of its delivery. Works are yet to commence on site. So there is a strong chance that this project may be funded. However, it in the first instance is really seeking funding to undertake that feasibility work, the community engagement and the master planning. Now, all this planning is absolutely necessary before you actually undertake physical works, as council well appreciates, and there's a fair amount of expenditure involved in actually doing that work. Council very well recognises the importance of community engagement when it comes to these important projects, and the community engagement is an essential part of this component. The total cost is estimated to be $100,000, and the expectation is that council will contribute $25,000 as a contribution to the total project. And there's further details about the project in the report, and I encourage any in the community that might be interested in this project to read that and to consider the range of benefits in the long term for Beaufort in terms of its livability, the improved linkages between those key points of interest that I highlighted, the improved amenity and the green spaces, the passive recreation opportunities for Beaufort. It's a really long-term project, and it's one which requires a significant amount of investment in the planning stage. So having said that, Mr Mayor and Council, I recommend that Council endorses the funding application for the Beaufort Linear project and commits $25,000 in matching funding towards completion of the feasibility study, the community engagement component and the master plan phase to progress the project towards being shovel ready.
Thank you, Mr. Nolan. Moved Councillor Clark, seconded Councillor Crowley.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd just like to speak in favour of this project and see it is a really important project. I know we're in beautiful Avoca today, and beautiful Avoca has a river running through it. This is the next best thing that we can do for Avoca. We don't quite have a river, but it's certainly got that capacity to be a really beautiful piece of the landscape, looking up the lake, through the old primary school football oval, past the swimming pool and down a big street with the skate park and the kids' playground. So it's a real great opportunity. I think we should take it up. Just a question for Mr Nolan, if I could please. In terms of the money, am I correct in understanding we have some money in our walkability budget that can actually be put towards us? Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct, Councillor Park. Council did allocate in its budget funds for the purpose of implementation of the walkability strategy, which was a document that was prepared a number of years ago, approximately 4 or 5 years ago. And so it's intended to use some of that money towards this project.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm really hoping that this project will ultimately be funded. It's one of those ones that's very important, and we talk about the future of our towns and the growth and development. These type of projects are going to become more and more important. And I think it's important for the growth of the town, but if we're talking about attraction and retention of tourists and residents in the town alike, this is what these people will be looking for when they want to come to the town and visit. They want to see these things, so it's even more important. And of course, you know, to encourage walking rather than driving and improve environmental outcomes is always going to be a good thing. So I'm really, fingers crossed that this gets up. Thank you.
Yes, we are here at Avoca at Council Park, and yes, we do have the river running through, and we appreciate the fact that the river floats attracts many, many tourists to the town, caravanners who spend money in the town and bring Avoca to the attention of many, many, many people. So yes, I support this as well for Beaufort. Even though it won't be a river for them, it'll be an improvement on the current day.
You may go sometimes in the year.
All those in favour? Carried. Item 13.2, Beaufort off-leash dog park. Mr. Gowan.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The purpose of this report is to provide council with a summary of findings in relation to the need for an off-leash dog park in Beaufort. Council received a submission from members of the Beaufort community in January 2021 requesting that an off-leash dog park be established in Beaufort. In response to this request, Council undertook a survey of the community to understand the scale of interest in the dog park. The online survey was hosted on Council's Engagement Hub platform and received 823 page views and 49 survey responses. Of the 49 respondents, 36 were Beaufort residents, with the remaining 13 being visitors. 43 of the respondents were dog owners, and all 49 agreed that the dog park would be well used. All respondents agreed that dog park facilities provide positive community interactions and relationships. Some of the comments submitted included, it's a positive step towards being bypass ready. While traffic is still going through town, the dog park will be known about and the town will be showcased as being inclusive and having great facilities for any traveller. Further comment, I travel to and from Horsham to the eastern suburbs of Melbourne with 2 and sometimes 6 dogs. Beaufort is my preferred stop. Further comment, I have many older friends in town with dogs that can't walk due to their mobility, their own mobility issues. This would allow them to come in their cars to let their dogs run around safely. Very good idea. Further comment, just get in and build it as soon as possible. And finally, excellent idea. To progress the concept further, an appropriate site needs to be identified, a design prepared and funding sought. Therefore, in conclusion, the community survey results demonstrate unanimous support for the concept of developing an off-leash dog park in Beaufort. The positive social and economic impacts of establishing a dog park is beneficial to Beaufort's growth as a dynamic community. And therefore, it's the officer recommendation that Council acknowledge the results of the survey and that Council requests a further report to be brought to Council that identifies an appropriate location and concept design for the requested off-leash dog park in Beaufort.
Thank you, Mr. Gowan. Moved, Councillor Ferrari, seconded Councillor Kerr. Any discussion? Councillor Ferrari.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to thank the community members for their responses first and foremost, because 48 responses is really pleasing, and that's probably more than we get to some other things that you think might be a higher priority, but I think it shows that the priority standing of this project. And I think it's interesting to note 13 visitors, which is about a quarter of the responses were from visitors, so they're people passing through the town, so they think it's important too. So I must admit I was originally a little bit sceptical about a dog park, but after seeing the amount of travellers that have dogs, and observing some neighbouring towns, their parks and what they've developed there, I'm confident it'll be a really important asset to the town, and it'll give people another reason to stop in our town, and that's becoming more and more important, especially if we eventually get bypass. So I really fully support this project.
All those in favour? Yeah. For subdivision. Mr. Gowans.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this report is to provide council with information that is relevant to making a determination for a 4-lot subdivision at 32 Back Raglan Road, Beaufort. The current site is 7.17 hectares, and the proposal is to have 3 smaller lots, two each of just over 4,000 metres, just over 6,500 square metres, and a larger 4th lot to be 5.6 hectares. One part of the lot, the current lot, is subject to the farming zone, and that's the bit that's suggested to be the larger lot. And the remaining part of the site is subject to the low density residential zone, and that is where the 3 other lots are proposed to be located. Notice was sent to neighbouring landowners, and public notice was also provided through council's website. The application was referred to the Country Fire Authority, Power Corp, Central Highlands Water Authority, Glenelg and Catchment Management Authority, who have provided conditional consent to the granting of a planning permit. 2 submissions were received in relation to the application, and the grounds of the submissions were that there would be loss of visual amenity and loss of rural farmland views. There'd be overlooking and loss of privacy. There'd be impact on wildlife that use the subject site. The adjoining landowner claims to have been informed that the lots would not be developed at the time of purchasing the adjoining lot. There's claims that the objector's property floods. The neighbouring existing dwelling will be boxed in at every fence line. There's a lack of respect for existing residents and their lifestyle. There'll be an increase in traffic, noise and disturbance during construction. The site currently supports drainage from the road reserve. There'd be a potential increase in domestic animal keeping and associated with development, and the cost of erecting suitable fencing on adjoining landowners. In terms of the application before us, the low density residential zone seeks to provide for low density residential development on lots which, in the absence of sewerage, can treat and retain all wastewater. The proposal is supported by local policy, which seeks to consolidate urban areas and provides for low density residential development on the periphery of Beaufort. The application is supported by a land capability assessment, which satisfactorily demonstrates that each of the proposed lots is capable of treating and retaining all wastewater. The objections made against the application have been considered, and in relation to the visual amenity and loss of farmland values, the proposed subdivision will not unreasonably impact on existing views, given the purpose of the applicable zone. In terms of impact on wildlife, the active subdivision does not result in physical ground disturbance and therefore cannot impact wildlife. It is, however, noted that a planning permit will not be required to support the possible construction of a dwelling on lots 1, 2 and 3. In relation to the claim of the objector's property floods, the submission does not demonstrate whether the proposed subdivision will exacerbate existing surface water on the property. However, the Catchment Management Authority has provided advice, and they have stated that during the 1% flood, which is commonly known as the 1 in 100 year flood, a portion of the proposed Lot 4 would be subject to inundation. However, Lot 4 already has an established dwelling outside the estimated 1 in 100 year flood event extent. And they've also stated that each proposed lot has flood-free access up to and including the estimated 1% AEP or 1 in 100 year flood event. In relation to the neighbouring existing dwelling will be boxed in at every fence line, the application before council is a 4-lot subdivision with no development proposed. Any future development of lots 1, 2 and 3 will be subject to assessment against the building regulations, which stipulate setbacks, height, design standards and overshadowing. In relation to the adjoining landowner claims to have been told that the lots would not be developed at the time of purchasing an adjoining lot, and also the lack of respect for existing residents and their lifestyle, council is unable to control information supplied by vendors and real estate agents at the time of sale. In relation to increased traffic, noise and disturbance during construction, any additional traffic associated with the proposed subdivision is not expected to impact on the condition or safety of the existing road network. In relation to the claim that the site currently supports drainage from the road reserve, all draining works associated with residential development are required to accord with council's infrastructure design manual, which ensures appropriate design. In relation to the claim that there will be overlooking or loss of privacy, privacy is not a planning consideration in the context of this application. In relation to the potential increase in domestic animal keeping associated with development and the cost of erecting suitable fencing on adjoining landowners, this application does not propose the use and or development of the land for the purpose of domestic animal husbandry. In conclusion, the proposed subdivision is a suitable planning outcome for the area and is compatible with adjoining and nearby land uses. And the objections made against the application have been assessed in accordance with the scheme and are not considered to provide a sufficient basis to refuse the application. Therefore, the officer recommendation is that, having considered the matters before council, that the council issue a notice of decision to grant a planning permit for the 4-lot subdivision. And there are a number of conditions associated with that application that make sure that the application will be in accord with the planning scheme.
Thank you, Mr. Gowan. Move, Councillor Clark. Seconded, Councillor Vance. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This seems like a quite logical development, a very logical spot. The only question I had, Mr. Gowans, and you've answered it in the report, is around the wastewater, and that's been as suitable for that. So that's good. Thank you. Nothing else from me.
One question, in relation to the proposed new freeway, how far would it be away?
Thank you, Councillor, for your question, through Mr. Mayor. It is nearby. It's nearby the corridor of interest that is currently under the environmental effects statement. It's not within the corridor, so the corridor is still further north from this location. But the most northern dwelling, the closest one to any future bypass, is already owned by the applicant and is already occupied. So the other dwellings will actually be further away from the proposed bypass.
All those in favour? Carried. Beaufort Historic Weybridge Building relocation. Mr. Gowans.
The work out here today. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this report is to provide council with an overview of community feedback that has been received in relation to the proposed relocation of a historic weighbridge building at Beaufort and the determination of the relocation site. At the August meeting this year, council resolved to undertake a community engagement process seeking feedback from the community on an alternative site for the weighbridge building and bring a further report to council on the matter when the community engagement process has been completed. An online survey of the community was conducted with the opportunity to participate being advertised in the Pyrenees Advocate and on council's website. 12 survey responses were received, which included suggestions of having the weighbridge relocated to 5 different areas, 5 different locations. They included the courthouse precinct, the Camp Hill barbecue area, the Lake Goldsmith steam rally site, the centre of town, either within the Memorial Gardens or at the Rotunda site, and the Beaufort Railway precinct. The survey responses demonstrate support for relocating the weighbridge to the railway precinct, suggesting that it would complement existing uses whilst respecting that the weighbridge has a relationship with transport. Whilst Pyrenees Shire Council is not the landowner of the rail precinct, it does have a lease agreement with VicTrack and is confident that consent could be sought to permit the proposed relocation of the weighbridge to this site. There are several stakeholders that require further consultation in relation to the proposed relocation, including VicTrack, the Department of Transport, the Beaufort and Skipton Health Services, which currently own the land where the weighbridge is to be relocated from, the Department of Environment, Land and Water and Planning, the Pyrenees Arts Council and the Lake Goldsmith Steam Preservation Association. Based on the survey outcomes, land management arrangements, existing usage and future township planning work associated with the proposed bypass of Beaufort, the preferred location to relocate the weighbridge is to the Beaufort Rail Precinct. This site allows for the building to remain publicly accessible whilst complementing existing usage. Therefore, it's the officer recommendation that Council acknowledges the outcome of the community survey and that the Beaufort Rail Precinct has been identified as the preferred location to relocate the weighbridge. That Council support officers in working with stakeholders to gain approval to relocate the weighbridge to the Beaufort Rail Precinct, and the Council, subject to recommendation 2, agrees to coordinate the relocation of the weighbridge from its current site at the Beaufort Mechanics Institute to the Beaufort Rail Precinct.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Great.
Move Councillor Lance, second Councillor Ferrari. Councillor Lance.
I think we're dealing with the obvious here, and the people of Beaufort are very keen on the weighbridge, so I'm more than happy to see it in the precinct around the rail where it will get the opportunity to be observed by visitors to the town as well as locals when they have their Lake Goldsmith rally. Around that area as well, so a good site.
Thank you, Councillor Ferrari.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I thank the community for their responses and the suggestions of some alternative locations, which is really pleasing. And I think it's important that we do make every effort to acknowledge and preserve our history, and this is one pleasing example of that. Thank you.
All those in favour? Carried. 13.3. Unused roads south and east of Lot 3 on PSAL 4378. Parish of Beaufort. Ms. Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this report is for Council to consider a new report on a matter that was laid on the table in October 2021 and to consider deciding whether 2 sections of government road in the township of Beaufort are not required for public traffic and unused roads. Council received a request from a resident seeking that Council gives notice to the Secretary of the Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning, DELP, advising that the sections of unused government road south and east of Lot 3 on the planning scheme, Parish of Beaufort, not required for public traffic and are unused in accordance with Section 400 of the Land Act 1958. The resident made an application to DELP to licence described portions of road in accordance with Section 138 of the Land Act for the purposes of grazing sheep and alpaca to maintain grass and weeds. The process of allocating licences on Crown land is managed by DELP, but part of that process is seeking confirmation from the relevant council that the land in question or road is not required for public traffic and is unused. The report was laid on the table in October and requesting that council officers recommended that consultation with neighbouring property owners take place, and the original report was attached for reference for council information. Objection to proposals to licence Crown land for grazing purposes are sought through a public notice process, which was done by advertising in the Pyrenees Avoca on the 3rd of September 2021. And in addition, as requested by council officers directly contacted neighbouring property owners to determine whether any objections were raised to the proposal. Some comments were made and will be passed on to DELP to aid in the decision-making processes. And the comments included a request that fencing on the property boundary should be stock-proof at no cost to neighbouring property owners, and that concerns were raised about access to the land in the future, the potential for tree removal, and the length of the licence period. This one of the neighbours has requested a key if any lock gates are implemented in the land. This does indicate that there may be some informal use of the land, and this request will be forwarded to DELP for follow-up. The council officer's recommendation, therefore, is that council authorises council officers to give notice to the Secretary of the Department of the Environment, Land, Water and Planning, advising that the sections of unused government road already described are not required for public traffic and are unused for the purposes of a road in accordance with Section 400 of the Land Act, and provide details of the comments made by neighbouring property owners to aid in DELP decision-making processes, including a neighbour's request that their accessibility be maintained and therefore may be used by that property owner. Thank you.
Ms. Brown. Move Councillor Clark, second to Councillor Keller. Councillor Clark. Any discussion, Councillor? All those in favour? Carried. Community grants, round 1, 2021-22. Ms. Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this report is to seek council consideration and awarding of community grant applications received for round 1 of the 2021-22 community grants programme. Council allocated $84,000 in the 2021-22 budget to fund this programme. $1,569 was overspent in last year's programme and was brought forward, and council has formally approved $5,000 funding to the Warburg Recreation Hub for the purchase of a mower before round 1 opened. This leaves $77,431 available for the balance of the programme. Round 1 of the programme was open for applications through the month of October, and a total of 22 applications were received. In summary, it is recommended as part of this report that $46,449.60 is awarded in grants for the first round of this year's community grants programme. I will, rather than go through the body of the report, Mr. Mayor, I will just move straight forward to the recommendations because that gives the same kind of information. So the officer's recommendation is that council considers this report regarding community grant applications for round 1, 2021-22 and awards $46,449.60 community grant payments as follows: $1,000 to the Beaufort Progress Association for the Avoca Riverside Market, $1,000 to the Barclay Hall and Recreation Reserve Committee for the Barclay Outdoors event, $1,000 to the Avoca Community Arts and Gardens Incorporated towards the Watch Your Story workshops for youth, $2,000 to the Beaufort Progress Association for signage and marketing equipment to reinvigorate the Avoca Riverside Market, $1,937.60 to Business for Beaufort for a new computer for the Radio 88, $682 to the Beaufort Agricultural Society to purchase and install ceiling spotlights at the Beaufort Goldfields Recreation Reserve change rooms, $1,100 to the Beaufort Historical Society towards equipment that supports the digitisation of the collection, $5,000 to the Beaufort Netball Club for the purchase of a new coffee machine, $2,000 to the Avoca Community Arts and Gardens Incorporated for equipment for the Gaming for Youth project, $391 to the Beaufort Croquet Club to supply and install a turf line marker. $2,000 to the Exercise Physiology Department of the Beaufort and Skipton Health Service for installation of equipment to be used in a small community gym, subject to that being open for public access. $200 to the Pyrenees Petanque Club towards resurfacing of the Moonambel Petanque piste. $7,000 to the Avoca Community Arts and Gardens Incorporated for the purchase of a mower for landscaping. $5,262 to the Moonambel Hall for the erection of a fence. $5,400 to the Crowlands Hall and Reserves Committee for the installation of a split system in the Crowlands Hall kitchen. $1,000 to the Avoca Friends of the Pool to train 2 under 18 youth in local youth for training in first aid and lifeguards. And allocate the following $1,000 to, sorry, I'll start again. Allocates the following grant amounts to the Barker Hall and Recreation Reserve with regards to the installation of a basketball, netball half court and purchase of basketball equipment, but defers payment until the project is fully funded to maximise time for funding acquittal. And that comes to $7,000 towards the installation of the half court and $1,477 towards purchase of basketball equipment. Awards $1,000 in total for an event, a Christmas event, that's been organised by 2 community groups, the Avoca Friends of the Pool and Advance Avoca, and award $1,000 grant between them in proportion to be determined by council officers. And defers any decision on the grant application from the Raglan Hall and Recreation Reserve Committee, as this may be withdrawn if council's funding nominations against the local roads and community infrastructure phase 3 programme are successful, which includes a sum against that particular phase of their project. And finally, denies the capital grant application for $5,883 by the Beaufort Progress Association facility upgrades at the premises known as Servo at 23 in Beaufort, as this is a privately owned facility. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Councillor, can I have someone to move? Move Councillor Clark, seconded Councillor Ferraro. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Ms. Bramwell, for the work of yourself and the team on this one. Just one question in relation to the Beaufort Hospital. It is possible for us to condition that it is available to the community use if we're to fund that facility at a state facility.
For your question, Councillor Clark, yes, we will put conditions on the allocation of that to make sure that it is publicly accessible. We wouldn't normally fund equipment in that service.
Councillor Vance.
Trouble with hearing aids and face masks. I just want to commend the staff on the presentation and impose upon the rest of my co-councillors the importance of these grants to our smaller communities. It's just such a great boost to the province of Moonambel and smaller places that have great difficulty finding people to run their organisations without having to raise funds to improve them.
Thank you, Councillor Vance. Yes, and I'd like to impress upon the community that we've allocated $84,000 in the budget for this year and are currently spending roughly $46,000. So there is still another $38,000 to be handed out in round 2. So any organisation that may be watching tonight can get in contact with council when round 2 will be open, and please put in your submissions. That's why the money's there, for you to use it for community purposes. Thank you, councillors. All those in favour? Carried. Item 13.3, privacy policy. Ms. Bramwell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this report is to seek council adoption of a revised privacy policy. The privacy policy was due for review into 2021, but the review did not result in any material changes. The purpose of the privacy policy, of course, is to state Council's commitment to the Victorian Information Privacy Principles and other obligations prescribed within the Privacy and Data Protection Act, and health privacy principles and other obligations within the Health Records Act. The Council's privacy policy was reviewed and ensured that all current legislation was referenced and provided in our new policy format. And a copy of the policy was provided to councillors. And the officer's recommendation is that Council adopts the revised privacy policy.
Thank you, Ms. Brenner. Move Councillor Vance, seconded Councillor Keogh. Councillor Vance.
Must be on board. We didn't have to make any changes to it. It's not hard to recommend.
Any further? No. All those in favour? Carried. Delegation update. Ms. Brenner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report is for Council to review and adopt 3 updated instruments of appointment and authorisations in accordance with the Local Government Act 2020. It is required that Council reviews its delegations, appointments and authorisations whenever changes are made to legislation or to changes in Council officers. A change of officers in the role of Environmental Health Officer has required that the Section 11 instrument of appointment and authorisation be amended to include the appointment of those officers. Advice from Maddox in 2019 also indicated that individual instruments of appointment should be done for officers, as this is considered best practice and allows separate officers to provide original instruments where legally required. The 3 instruments of appointment and authorisation were provided as attachments for Council consideration, and it's the officer's recommendation that Council, in the exercise of its powers conferred by the Local Government Act 2020 and other legislation as referred to in the attached instruments, adopt the instruments of appointment and authorisation for Lachlan Benjerfield, Billy Ling and Tom Russell, who are the new Environmental Health Officers, allowing these officers to undertake the duties of an environmental health officer. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brenner. Move Councillor Keogh. Sorry, Councillor Ferrari. Seconded Councillor Keogh. Councillor Ferrari. All those in favour? Annual report 2021, 2020 and 21. Mr. Nolan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's a pleasure to be able to present this report tonight to Council, being the annual report for the Pyrenees Shire Council for 2020-2021. The report has been prepared in accordance with Section 98 of the Local Government Act 2020, and importantly it contains all prescribed matters, including the operations for Council, a report on the audited financial statement, the audited performance statement, a copy of the auditor's report on the performance statement, a copy of the auditor's report on the financial statement, and a number of other matters that are prescribed in the regulations. Councillors, I'll just sort of draw your attention to some of the highlights that are contained within that annual report. And in reflection on the year 2020-2021, of course, one of the major aspects of that year was the year that was affected by COVID-19 pandemic. The report outlines Council's response to the pandemic, certainly the formation of a pandemic planning committee, the establishment of an economic recovery task force, a number of activities to assist in economic recovery in terms of outdoor dining and street furniture, which has provided a boost for some of our businesses. And even the live streaming of council meetings is a result of our response to the pandemic. The second item of significance that I'll draw to council's attention, obviously it's something as well, councillors are well aware, is the council elections that were held in November 2020 and through which the full council was returned. including councillors Clark and Easton, who were subject to a council election, and councillors Ferrari, Keogh and Vance that were returned unopposed. The third relevant issue is the delivery of projects, and I'll point out that in excess of $12 million worth of capital expenditure was incurred during this quite challenging year. And some of those projects include things like the Avoca Inclusive Play Space, the Snake Valley Skate Park, Carnham Female-Friendly Change Facilities, and the Lexington Community Hub, which was substantially completed during the 2020-2021 year and is soon to be handed over to the community and officially opened. Council also completed $2 million worth of projects under the federally funded Drought Communities program, as well as several other projects undertaken under the Commonwealth's Local Road and Community Infrastructure program. Importantly, the Stockyard Hill Wind Farm was completed, which has a significant impact on the landscape within the Pyrenees and provides a significant boost to the economy. Council has implemented a Shire-wide curbside waste and recycling system, which was commenced in the 2021 financial year, and the contracts that were let by council were awarded during that year. The year has been reported as one in which was subject to a significant challenge and also one of triumph. The report, which has been circulated to councillors electronically, is currently at printers, will be made available for the community just as soon as it's received from the printers. And before I make my recommendation, I'd just like to express my thanks in particular to our Senior Communications Officer, Kate Depler, who was instrumental in coordinating and putting together this report, which celebrates the year that was, which was a significant year in the history of Pyrenees Shire, and also Liz Carruthers, who assisted Kate in the fine-tuning of that report, and others across the organisation who assisted with the content of it. In conclusion, council, it's my pleasure to recommend the council receives the Pyrenees Shire Council Annual Report for 2020-2021 and places a copy of the annual report on the Pyrenees Shire Council website.
Thank you, Mr. Noel. Councillors, someone move. Councillor Keogh, seconded Councillor Clark. Councillor Keogh.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and I'd just like to second what our CEO has spoken about. It's been very a tumultuous time, but a time of great growth in many areas, and it's been a privilege to be on the council and to be re-elected as my fellow councillors have, and to see those through those projects and see the start of a few more projects. So very exciting. Thank you.
I'd just like to speak about not only last year but the year before. Both mayors, Councillor Keogh and Councillor Ferrari, bore the brunt of being mayor through the COVID times, and it wasn't easy. And I commend them for their work in trying to keep the community going through that time. I'm hoping with my ascension into the chair that we may be past most of the COVID issues, and I look forward to, as a member of our council team, trying to improve the lives and improve the outlook for our community going forward post-COVID. Hopefully it starts looking up from now. All those in favour? Carried. Council meetings. Mr. Nolan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this report is for council to decide the meeting schedule for council meetings and briefing sessions to be held during the 2022 calendar year. A schedule of meetings is attached to this report, which identifies that and recommends that council hold 12 council meetings, so one per month, including 10 to be located in Beaufort and 2 to be located in Avoca. And also for council to hold 11 community cuppa events in 11 small communities, as well as at Beaufort and Avoca with targeted interest groups. And those small communities around the Shire, it's worth actually reading these for the community to be aware. They include Trawalla, Caramballick, Crowlands, Warborough, Barclay, Landsborough, Redbank, Amphitheatre, Naniellic, Lexington and Snake Valley, as well as Beaufort and Avoca. And in the past, council has had the tradition of getting around all its small communities over the course of a 2-year period. Council is committed strongly to go into the communities to meet directly where members of the community can have access to councillors face to face. So the meeting schedule and the council briefings are there outlined in the schedule. In addition to that, there is a requirement for council to hold an annual statutory meeting, and that is scheduled for the 8th of November. So council, I recommend then that council adopts the meeting schedule 2022 as attached to this report and gives public notice in accordance with council's policy, governance rules 2020 of the proposed council meeting dates.
Thank you, Mr. Nolan. Move councillor Clark, second Councillor Keogh. Councillor Clark.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. And I'd just like to reiterate the real importance of us getting out and about with the community covers, of getting out to our communities. I think the community really appreciates meeting our senior officers and having all their 5 councillors here to speak with, because although you only elect one of us at a time, the 5 of us are here to work for everybody, and we're really keen to get out and meet you in your own communities, because that's the best place to talk to you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark.
Just to second that, it'd be wonderful to get out there and see everyone again. It's so very exciting.
Well, I'd like to second everything you said, Councillor Clark. It has been something that I've enjoyed since we've started the cuppa system, whereby you do get out into communities that you normally don't visit, and not only do the community have the opportunity to talk to us, we have the opportunity to talk to the community. It works both ways. Thank you. All those in favour? Carried. A petition, Mr. Nolan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At the October Ordinary Council meeting, Council received a petition which is signed by 17 residents from the Carnham Snake Valley area, which included a statement and a covering letter from Mr. Ian Murdoch. The statement expresses dissatisfaction with the level of consultation that council affords to its residents, and also in respect of transparency and decision making. It expresses its concern in respect of decisions made by council and whether they satisfy the pub test, and collectively call on council to urgently address their methods of and standards of proactive engagement with ratepayers, and call on council to publicly declare a review of procedures involving public participation to address these concerns. So council was essentially, the central issue of this petition relates to engagement and dissemination of information to residents and ratepayers, and that's the focus of this report that I've presented to council tonight. Council's engagement strategy 2017 to 21 sets out council's approach to engagement. The aim of that strategy is set out as outlined in my report. It is based on the IAP2 principles and model, and those guiding principles include engagement will be responsive and timely, promote activities and achievements, increase awareness of council activities, foster a positive relationship with the community, match communication methods to communication expectations, and fulfil statutory requirements. The strategy identifies a range of key customers, including our Pyrenees communities, our organisation, and a range of friends, which include government agencies, regulatory bodies, other local governments, etc. The approach of the engagement strategy is to develop an annual plan, which sets out key activities and projects that are to be delivered during the course of the year, and to identify the methods of communication and engagement appropriate to each of those activities. In the context of the petition, however, it's worth council asking two questions. Is the existing strategy current and appropriate, and is it meeting council and community engagement needs? And is council implementing the strategy as intended? The appropriateness of the strategy and the extent to which council has implemented its own strategy is worth a more in-depth assessment than what is provided in this report. And it is intended that the assessment be undertaken in conjunction with the review of the strategy, which is currently underway. And earlier in this meeting, Mr. Mayor, Ms. Bramwell reported on the current review of the strategy, which is underway. And that's due to be reported in the coming months. And the review will go some way to meeting what has been sought in this petition. Further to the review of the strategy, it's also important, I think, to note that council has commenced this process of better engaging with its community and demonstrating its commitment to engaging. I mentioned earlier about the community cuppa sessions, and that's something that council has committed to and strongly supports. Obviously was impacted in 2021 as a result of COVID limitations, but we will expect that will be a highlight of the coming year in terms of being of council's engagement. To demonstrate council's commitment around engagement, council undertook a deliberative engagement process ahead of the preparation of its council plan. This deliberative engagement resulted in the establishment of a community panel comprising 25 members of our community, and the appointment of an independent facilitator to facilitate a process to prepare a community vision. And in doing so, that community vision was then used to formulate the new council plan, which is a 4-year council plan that was adopted by council at the October council meeting. That 4-year council plan has a highlight in it around community engagement. It is based around enabling principles. And those enabling principles include community engagement and transparency and accountability. And these dot points that are identified in this report around community engagement and transparency and accountability were well worked through by council and considered as essential in terms of being able to deliver into the future for its community. And I commend the council for the work that it's done in being open to undertake improvement in the area of community engagement and transparency and accountability. The council plan contains a number of measures, which is a means of council being able to measure its performance against that council plan. And those measures will be reported in a public way to the community on an annual basis. And in addition to that, we will report to the community on a quarterly basis about the ongoing implementation of the council plan. That's a commitment that we provide to the community. One of the other specific initiatives that I'd just like to highlight is the initiative around the engagement hub. Earlier in the night, Mr. Gowans actually identified the project around a dog off-leash park, and that dog off-leash park was one of those projects that was brought to council by the community, and council took the initiative to go out into the community, to engage with the community, to check that response. And as a result of that, and the figures escape me, Mr. Mayor, but that digital engagement hub resulted in a significant amount of engagement with the community and lots of responses. And I wish I had the figures in front of me, but it was quite a significant number of
883 views.
883 views. And that's the sort of engagement that we've not really received in projects in the past. So it's a fantastic initiative. It's been made available through the digital technology and the innovation that's been created in the way in which we engage with our community. The measures around council plan also identify council's engagement through social media. We have a fantastic tool here to engage with our community, and our communications team are very active in disseminating information to the community through social media. We have a community notice board which is made available in print media, because we are aware that there's about 25% of our community that don't actively use the internet for communications and rely heavily on the print media. So the notice board becomes an important tool to communicate those important activities of council. We have a community newsletter which is produced again by our fabulous communications team, and that's distributed in hard copy to every resident in the Shire on a quarterly basis. It has a range of sort of useful information and opportunities for the community to contact and to engage with council. And of course, we have our website, which contains quite a lot of information, including a recent project dashboard, which is available, which identifies all our major projects and the status that those projects are at. And I compliment our communications team for the work that's done in populating the content around those projects. And in fact, I'd like to, while I'm complimenting people, I did fail to compliment Ms. Bramall on her work in the annual report as well. And I probably ought to compliment Mr. Gowans and his team as well on the information and the delivery of these major projects. Which brings, I guess, to the point of significant change. And one of the points that's mentioned in the petition, which is of significant note, is reference to where there is significant change for members of the community. The matter that was referred to is the change relating to our waste service. And certainly during 2021, council have resolved to provide a universal service, curbside, roadside collection service, and a 4-bin system for our urban areas. And the collection includes a glass collection. This is a fabulous initiative. The Pyrenees Shire shows a lot of leadership, but it was a significant change for our communities because it impacted on all of our residents. So the question that is posed is, through that process, was our engagement sufficient? And so part of the report that I've presented to you actually identifies some of the engagement that was undertaken as part of that significant change process. And I won't go through what that engagement contained, but it did include a range of digital and print communication. It was impeded to a great extent by the COVID pandemic and the inability to get out into the communities and to meet face to face. But it was something that is worth council reflecting on in terms of how that engagement was done, and whether, when it comes to significant change in the future, whether our engagement is adequate or sufficient. And it is a good time to reflect on that as a significant change in our community. And in doing so, I know in discussions with council and briefing, many of these issues have been discussed and debated, and and they're reflected in the revised council plan. So, Mr. Mayor, I guess in conclusion, I'd just like to thank Mr. Murdoch for initiating this petition. I do hope that Mr. Murdoch and the signatures to the petition feel that they could continue to approach council on a range of matters, and I would hope that members of the Snake Valley and Carmen community would come to meet council face to face when we meet in Snake Valley in December next month. And in conclusion, Mr. Mayor, I just recommend that council seeks the views of the author of the petition as part of the review of the community engagement strategy, which is currently underway. That council considers this a report on the review of the engagement strategy and the adoption of a new engagement strategy at a future council meeting. And that council writes to the author of the petition to thank them for raising their concerns and to advise of the outcome of this report.
Thank you, Mr. Nolan. Moved Councillor Keogh, seconded Councillor Clark. Councillor Keogh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, I would like to thank Mr. Murdoch and those others on the petition, as this has been a great prompt, not only for us to reevaluate and highlight the communication strategies that we're currently using, but to continue to improve at all times, to make sure that we are engaging and informative and transparent for our community. So again, I'd like to thank our communications teams. They are unreal, and even tonight, the setup to be able to be here in Avoca and to be able to be live streaming to all of you out there, and to have participants as well tonight. To get that information out there is just brilliant, and it will be really exciting to meet with members of our Mantini ward next month when we can come together. So thank you for that detailed report to Mr. Nolan. That's wonderful to show what we are doing.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. CEO, these are not particularly easy matters to respond to, and I think my sense is that you've actually struck the right tone and you've struck the right reflective nature in terms of what we're trying to say in the report. And when I say tone, absolutely we're committed to having a fair dinkum go as council in terms of doing communication. And then I say our fair dinkum go, not to be perfect or anything like that. We're trying to really have a fair dinkum go. And secondly, I don't think any of us would shy away from the fact that we're always trying to do better, and we're really happy to have a conversation with anyone about how they think we could do that in that sense of things. And I think what you've demonstrated in the report is the number of steps we have taken in regard to this issue, particularly when we've used a number of media and we rely on the people to say, yeah, okay, this is important to me and I'll do something in that sense. And I think the reflection that you said in your comments today is that this did affect every single person who lives in a house in Pyrenees Shire, and maybe there was some things to think about in that context. But the bit that I find really interesting in this context is this is not the only bit of communication we've had with our community and the only time we've asked the community for feedback. I mean, we asked them for feedback on the budget. We asked them feedback on the council plan. In fact, we actually got some special people to do the council plan. We asked them feedback on the rating strategy. We've asked them feedback on a whole range of policies. We've had a range of service changes because of COVID, and we've communicated that to the community. We've got a whole range of service delivery things. So we're building bridges and we're building roads and we're actually helping libraries and we're doing things like that. So we communicate all that to the community. We've got events and community activities. We've got a shitload of stuff going on. Oops, sorry, I just wasn't going to swear. We have got a lot of stuff going on, and that's one of the challenges of council. We do so many things, and mostly they don't touch every single person. This one did, and I think that's a fair reflection for us to think about in that context. The one thing I would say about this is, in terms of the future, is, you know, we rely on you to pick this up and go, this is important to me, I'm going to make a comment. But certainly one of the best ways that you can help us as council is if we can actually communicate to you when we need you to make a comment. And the best way to do that is social media and being part of our Facebook page in particular, because that gives us a chance to send something to you, and you certainly don't have to respond to it, but that's certainly the most timely way in terms of finding things out about council and what council's up to, and we really try to be really current about that. So again, thank you for the report, Mr. Nolan, and yeah, good piece of work, and we all know we've always got plenty to do.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. I'd just like to say that the report gives us an idea of what went on, in particular with regard to the waste project. Now, the comment you made, Councillor Clark, was and Mr. Nolan, that it affected everybody in the Shire that has waste collected. And that's an awful lot of people. Now, I personally would say 5 or 6 people have come to me and asked questions about it. Some have been unhappy about it. But when you consider that everybody in the Shire was affected by this, there's been wonderful acceptance of what we've done as a council. And I think that's a credit to everybody involved, that we've got the plan going, worked out how we're going to do it, got it up and running, and it's working well now. And that's a congratulations to the officers, to the staff, for making that happen. All those, Councillor Vance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've been prompted to stand. I was going to reserve my opinion, but inevitably situations like this arrive from somebody who has a fly in the eye. Just didn't suit at the time, but I'm sure, given time, our garbage collection and what have you that has upset quite a few people will find its way out of the niggling position, and they'll be appreciated by that. It's been a large problem in our council. We've had skips available for people to use, and they've been abused. We're doing the right thing by our community by introducing the bin system, and we're doing the right thing by the environment. People who say we don't have garbage or recycling, I'm kidding themselves, because we all have it. Thank you.
All those in favour? Carry. Councillor reports and general business. Councillor Vance.
Yes, we're going to start the meeting, Mr. Mayor.
You won't always be.
No, thank you for that. Appreciate your statement. I did have a rural council's meeting recently, and prior to the meeting we had a member of the Western Province, I believe she is, Bev McArthur, spoke to the rural councils about undergrounding power lines and the coalition's approach towards this. I don't know whether it was actually the coalition's approach or whether it was Bev's approach, really. I think more inclined to be the second, but she's very keen to promote the undergrounding of power lines, which is, I'm sure, on our minds also, but we've got to face realities in time once the EES is up and out there for people to review. They might come up with a different opinion. The context of the meeting was really to sign off for the state government on 3 programs that the rural councils have had running, and that's the rural population retention, addressing rural housing, and also jobs and opportunities to recruit people into our rural communities. Housing was one that got quite a deal of discussion for the lower socio people, and I was very interested to read Councillor Clark's column last week to see where the state government is pumping money into these housing for the lower socio area, but council, I believe, are not going to be able to receive any rates from the same properties. So that's an interesting situation which didn't come into the conversation at rural councils. The member for Mill area was very excited about the fact that they were going to build 25 new residences in Mill. But at that stage, I bet he didn't realise that council weren't going to receive any rate funding, and they probably would have to expect that they would be providing all the services. We also had some discussion around the fixing country roads funding report. And the message to come back was that we need to let the state government know that they're generous in giving it, but they're getting really good bang for their buck. You know, council are using the money wisely, and we're matching the funding as well in a lot of cases. So it's not just a grant as such, it's got to be matched. And also, the Rural Council's Transformation Project, we, Mr. CEO, we're involved in this with Northern Grampians and Arabs, I believe. Is that correct?
Thanks, Councillor Vance, for your question. Applications under the program are due in December, around mid-December, and we're currently in discussions with a number of our neighbours. There are, potentially 3 projects that could involve Pyrenees, and we're still to finalise which group that we'll continue to partner with. But we're in active discussions around that program.
Other than that, I attended our staff meeting last Tuesday, and I'd like to also thank Councillor Ferrari for his previous efforts in the last 12 months. Writing a column every second week was a task within itself, I believe. You've done an extremely great job under pressure. Well done, Councillor Ferrari. And other than that, I had the Remembrance Day service in Landsborough on Tuesday, where we had about 30 people in attendance, and the school children came down and participated. So a very successful service once again in Landsborough. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think the CEO did allude to the fantastic skate park that we're having down in Snake Valley. We've also had a wonderful installation, just put in an astronomical signage that that talks about some fabulous things you can see in the skies above our dark sky of Snake Valley. So I know next month us as a group are going to be able to see these, and also we will be visiting the Snake Valley's Astronomical Association. It's almost a tongue twister, but seeing their premises and what a wonderful asset it is to the local and wider community. So it's an internationally, or at least nationally acclaimed sort of spot there. So that'll be really exciting. Also around Snake Valley, there's a lot of tree removal happening. In the recent storm event, we seem to have copped it quite badly in that area. I'm not sure whether Doug can attest to that, but we've had our workers out there. We've had some wonderful responses from residents, though. They've been very thankful for the work that's happening. There's still a lot to occur, though. So we thank the workers that have got out there, and there were workers getting out there before the major part of the storm and through the storm and then after. So we're very thankful to our work staff for that, and the contractors and that we had assisting them, because they've been very good at what they're doing and very considerate of residents. So we thank them greatly. Only on that too, and connected to the MEMC meeting that I attended, we did have to, there was emergency support that was needed for one resident, but apart from that, we didn't have any other major instances. So that was really wonderful, and to be able to protect that resident was wonderful as well. At the MEMC meeting, this was, and I think people are starting to see this around the Shire, with the weather conditions, it looks to be like a delayed fire season or delayed danger period. So we'll have to be on the alert for that. And I know we've already got residents have been asking about roadside mowing and all that. We know that's already in process. So, but trying to make the most of the conditions and to be able to do that to protect us through that summer season. If we do get a summer season, though, I think we will, but it has been a bit crazy, especially for the farmers I know lots of farmers have struggled with their shearing and things like that in our neck of the woods. The only other thing I did want to plug was that tomorrow evening, again, a shout out to our great communications leader, Kate Depler, we'll be running a virtual vaccination forum. So we've got a number of fantastic specialists, as well as some fantastic parents and people that will be talking about vaccination, and particularly in regards to younger people and to children. There's a lot of information out there, and we want to be able to decipher a lot of that for parents who are assisting their teenagers and making the decision, and perhaps looking forward in protecting all members of our community from COVID. So that will be live streamed at 7 p.m. tomorrow night from the council chambers, and details can be found on our website. Thank you.
Councillor Campbell. Councillor Clark.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just firstly, in terms of my MAB hat, been a few things on. I participated quite recently in the review of rate capping, and don't get anyone get excited about that. That's really a review about a process, not about rate capping in that sense of things. But we did make some very pertinent points based on our experience here in Pyrenees, which is just how much it locks you into a pattern of spending and doesn't give you much flexibility as a council once you actually do get a variation. So that was quite useful. Also, the waste reform legislation, circular economy bill is in the House at the moment, and we're working with the crossbenchers to get some modifications to that, we hope, and hope that the crossbenchers have had some experience today with the pandemic legislation. They'll be in good form to go back to government on this one as well. Also, Better Regulation Victoria's report on moving from best practice to common practice in planning has been released by the government this week. This is a big precursor to the planning legislation that's changed, and it may be a reflection on me as a personality. I thought it was a rollickingly good read. I reckon everyone else thinks it's boring as hell. But it really spells out a number of really specific things about the planning scheme that we can do better in terms of making the system work for people. And I think in that sense, it's really good to be that really good document to work to. I had the chance to visit Ararat Rural City and one of our neighbours for Remembrance Day. And that was really nice to catch up with the Mayor, Joe Armstrong, recently re-elected again up there. In terms of local council stuff, obviously our LEN meetings, CBGA has continued to meet. And for those of you who have met Rob Law, our exec officer at CBGA, Rob's announced that he's going back to parenting next year and swapping roles with his wife, which is really good, but we'll probably be able to keep him on a little bit in that sense. So that's great. He's been with us for 5 or 6 years. He's been terrific value for the region in the terms of the work he's done. A few planning matters, a couple of things down at the preschool at Warborough. As Councillor Keogh said, I get the gig tomorrow to moderate this vaccination forum, and I've got to control people like Councillor Keogh and Ange Chandler from Cape Hill Creek, so I think I've got my work cut out for me, but it will be a really good night and really informative, I think, for people if you can tune in, and if you can't tune in, certainly you'll be able to watch it afterwards as well. Just in closing, I'd like to pass my thanks on to Damien too for his role. It's been a pretty tough year because you're up and down all over the place, and I never thought I'd say that going to Canberra in June for the National General Assembly would be the highlight of our year, but it was the one chance we actually got to get out of it in that sense of things, and actually it was really nice now in hindsight to have been able to do that. But yeah, thank you very much, and I hope you're enjoying your quiet life. To Ron, absolutely look forward to working with you over the next 12 months. This will be terrific. And just one quick one to finish up with. I know with the storm damage, we've done a fair bit of work, and potentially we're at a stage where we might be starting to qualify for national disaster relief payments. So I'm hearing that the government is getting really difficult to deal with in the context of repayments. I'm particularly hearing this from Yarra Range, has had so huge damage in June. So they think they've incurred maybe about $12 million in damage in terms of things, and they're getting crazy things like, why didn't you ask for pre-approval before you went and cleared that road to that person's house so they could get out? So I just say that as a note of caution to council officers, and if you've got any information for me on that in that space, please let me know. Thanks, Mr. Nick.
Thank you, Councillor Ferrari.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, we did get out to the engagement at Canberra, and I think we just got out and back home in time, because it wasn't long after that I think they had a bit of a couple of scares up there in the lockdown, so we got in and we got out just in time. But it was very interesting up there and opened my eyes, and certainly I think we did do some good work up there. It's not just all beer and skittles. But anyway, had a couple of meetings with constituents. I was pleased to open the Beaufort Community Market. It's up and running again, and it was good to see a nice little crowd there. And I think those markets are quite important. I enjoy them, and so do many in the community. And it is an opportunity for a lot of the local people to display and sell their wares and their items. So it's really, really important. And hopefully we can get a little bit of sunshine for some of those future markets. I had a discussion with the Beaufort Secondary College regarding the hands-on learning program, and I just keep getting impressed by the Beaufort Secondary College and their commitment to the learning and the development of our local people, young people, and they're really, really committed and a great bunch, and they're just so easy to work with, and it's a real pleasure to be part of that. All other councillors provided a wreath for Remembrance Day. That's such an important day, and I'm sure we all took that minute silence. I caught up with Joe Armstrong and the CEO of Ararat. It was socially, but nevertheless, you find that sometimes at those social events, you do have some pretty healthy discussions around work and what we do together. So, and sometimes that conversation is more free flowing if it's at a social thing. So that's really good. I'd like to thank the food pantry, Beaufort Food Pantry, because it was brought to my attention probably a month ago now that there was a couple of people stuck in the caravan park at Beaufort, and they're from South Australia and they couldn't get back home. So when it was brought to my attention, they'd been there about a month or 5 weeks and they were struggling a bit. So a couple of community members and I got together and we contacted the food pantry, and they put together this really, really magnificent hamper, and we took it up and presented it to them. They were so grateful, actually very humbled, and they're still not back there. They're still in the caravan park, and I have seen them again, and I'll make a point of seeing them before they go. So hopefully they can get back to where they need to be sooner rather than later. But it was really, really interesting to see just those people were so happy to help out, and the food pantry does do a fantastic job. So I can't thank them enough. And I'd just like to congratulate Councillor Easton on being elected the Mayor, and I really do look forward to working with and supporting you in that role. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Recently, I officiated at the local senior citizens AGM. I think it was deferred 4 times before we finally were able to hold a meeting. And the ability to hold a meeting and have a group of people and just get together was absolutely wonderful. And those people, as senior citizens of our community, were really appreciative of the fact that they could get out, get together and have a meeting. Jenny and I were off to Ararat on Saturday night to the changeover legacy dinner. A wonderful group of people who look after a very special group of people within our community. Again, not getting younger, as discussed earlier today. These groups of volunteers and people are all getting older, and the younger rather community members don't seem to be following in their footsteps. So I think they do a wonderful job, and I support all these groups of people who work for our communities. It would be terrible if we lost them. Tender Remembrance Days and used the wreath last Thursday, and this Thursday we have a centenary event for our scimitar here in Avoca. With all the funding received and the work by council and others to get the scimitar brought back to life, repainted and prepared for another 100 years. The ceremony will be on Thursday at 2:30 p.m. So anybody wants to come along, COVID safe will be required, but please come along and enjoy the afternoon's event. It won't be all that long, but the thing's been there for 100 years. The community put it there 100 years ago. So come along and enjoy. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. That concludes the meeting for the evening. I want to thank everybody that's attended. I want to thank everybody that's watching on our live stream. and hope that you've got some valuable information out of the meeting. Thank you again. I'll close the meeting at 7:49.
Thanks.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.